What's going on, my buzz smokers and my movie lovers, and welcome to another episode of 5 on It, a show where we do two things, smoke doobies and review movies. I am one half of your host. I am Francisco. He is Sir Frazier. And on today's episode, we are reviewing arguably the greatest movie ever made, to some people would say.
It's definitely it gets that nod from more than a few people.
It's definitely in the running for probably the greatest movie ever, as a lot of people would say. We are talking The Shawshank Redemption. Came out in 1994, starring Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman, directed by Frank Darabont. But before we dive into the details on that, Sir Frazier, what are you smoking on?
Man, so I picked up these cartridges, single origin, and Cinematography GG number 12. Yeah, it's a nice hybrid.
Is that Gorilla Glue, I'm guessing?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. I fucks with the glue.
Anything Gorilla Glue, Girl Scout cookies, like the GSC,
OGs.
the GG, anything like all those like acronyms and all those ones.
You're on the right path.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yo, so before we dive into this movie, man, what's on your radar, dude?
Yeah. Well,
what are you high on these days? You know what I'm saying?
What's something I'm high on?
Either something coming up, something that's out.
Well, obviously, Deadpool Wolverine. Let's just get that one out of the way.
A given.
That's just like the main one that we're definitely high on right now.
For sure.
I can tell you a little one I'm low on is Horizon. I don't know what that bullshit is about, but you can get that the fuck out of my goddamn way. I know it's got Kevin Costner, and I know some people love that Yellowstone bullshit, but I'm not fucking with it right now. I'll have to wait until that thing comes out on streaming before I even give it a chance, because I saw that trailer and it told me literally nothing. So I am not wasting my money on that. So I'm high on Deadpool Wolverine, a little low on Horizon. But what are you high on, Sir Frazier?
Man, I'm high on Long Legs. This came out this week, I believe. So this is weekend of July 12th. This is by Osgood Perkins. It stars Micah Monroe, Nicolas Cage, Blair Underwood, who's an actor. I have not seen his name in anything lately, but this movie revolves around an FBI agent who is trying to track down a serial killer, and this takes her down the path of this occult groups and things like that. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to checking this out. Definitely looks promising from the trailers that I've seen.
I heard some good things about it from some people that is it out right now? Mm-hmm. Yeah, some people that have seen it already said it's pretty good. Another pretty solid Nicolas Cage performance. So
it's kind of billed as a horror movie too, which from the trailer I definitely get those vibes. But it also kind of gave me a little bit of Silence of the Lambs vibes, a little bit. But yeah. I mean, that I could be far off when I actually see the movie, but I'm definitely high on that one.
Well, it's categorized as a horror mystery. Mm-hmm. So I mean, and it's about an FBI agent. So I can see the Silence of the Lamb kind of aspect to it
with Clarice.
Yeah. Let's see if it can be seen in that same type of light. Yep. Just an hour 41 minutes, so it's not too long. But I'm definitely going to be checking that out as well, because anything horror, I'm with. I'm with
it. Yeah. Well, pivoting back to Shawshank Redemption. So this movie is based off of a screenplay by Stephen King.
Speaking of horror,
the screenplay is based off of a story by Stephen King called Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption. You already mentioned some of the stars in this movie. Really just great acting. This movie, man, it's one of those movies that just, it's kind of a head scratcher looking back. It was considered a box office disappointment at the time. I think we really should consider doing a review of certain years in film, because I think this year jumps out immediately. Mm-hmm. Check out the movies that were released in 1994. Pulp Fiction, Forrest Gump, The Lion King, True Lies, The Mask, Fresh, and Above the Rim. And that's just mentioning a few. God damn, that year was great.
I mean, that
year is stacked with talent, like just great pictures. Pulp Fiction, top 10 easily. Shawshank Redemption, definitely top 10. Bro, this movie is, when I think about it, contextualizing it in this year, it almost isn't a huge surprise that a prison drama with a really all male cast kind of didn't get a lot of nods or get a lot of eyeballs on it until it hit like VHS, really.
Well, I heard it had to do with, like I said, like there's no females like in the cast. The people were kind of thrown off by the title. Like the whole prison story just wasn't like kind of the thing at the time. So those were just a few things that played into like, you know, being a box office bomb. But I mean, granted, that is the tell, like when everybody wants to make money when you're making a movie. But if you can't make money, then you want some sort of notoriety from it, like some awards potentially. And unfortunately, it didn't win like some of the big awards. But I think even looking back on it, people can even look at this movie as, I mean, it lost to Forrest Gump, which, I mean, in my opinion, I think that's you could give that to Shawshank, in my opinion. I've seen both of those movies, and I would give it to Shawshank, in my opinion.
Yeah, Forrest Gump's a fun movie. I don't mean to shit on it either. I think it's a really fun movie.
It's
personally.
Fine. Fuck Jenny.
Huh?
Fuck Jenny.
Yeah,
Let me just throw that in
man.
there. But
the ultimate, she's the villain of that story.
Yeah, she's the ultimate villain, yeah.
Something I was going to say just real quick to contextualize, I think I was reading up on this movie and listening to some different commentary on it, and I think something that came up that makes sense to some extent in terms of why this movie wasn't publicly well received is that this movie was dropped in 94, and this is the same year of Clinton's crime bill in 1994. So I think that there was a lot of public sentiment that just was not empathetic or sympathetic to what prisoners were going through. And so I could totally understand in that climate, a story of this kind that really seeks to humanize the people on the other side of those bars, those walls, was met with maybe apathy or indifference, or just didn't really clearly didn't get people to into the theaters. But that's just, I mean, I think that's an interesting kind of contextual note for kind of understanding why this movie underperformed the way that it did, in addition to other factors, like I said, some of the big hitters that were released that year that were so much more maybe family, or maybe not family friendly, but more just viewer friendly. I mean, this movie is pretty bleak and dark.
Yeah,
even Pulp Fiction has its light. It's really light moments, even though it's dark too.
Yeah, I mean, in Shawshank, I mean, it is like kind of bleak in a way, not in a way, but I mean, it is bleak because like you are in prison. Andy goes through a whole bunch of like terrible things, but it does end on a high note.
This will be a spoiler.
Yeah, let me quick spoiler alert. If you don't know our show, we definitely got to hit the spoiler alert button. So if you haven't seen Shawshank, come back and listen to the show.
Pause. Go see this movie. Come back.
Yes.
I insist. This movie, to your point, though, I mean, it got a lot of nominations, including Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Cinematography, but it didn't win in anything.
I know, and I'm just kind of looking at like obviously the big three. Like Best Actor, Best Actress. I mean, it's not going to be up for Best Actress because there's no chicks in the movie. Best Director, Best Picture. Forrest Gump cleaned all three. I mean, it lost in Best Actress. Was even Forrest Gump even nominated? Anything in that? No. But I don't know, man, because maybe I have to go back and rewatch Forrest Gump or something, but
it's a fun movie, but I don't put it above Pulp Fiction or this.
No, and even like
I don't even know if I put it above Lion King. Let me think about that.
And like the other nomination was 4 Weddings and a Funeral, Pulp Fiction, Quiz Show. So
Bro,
it's like
Quiz Show. That shit was boring. Maybe if I went back and rewatched it now, I feel differently. But that wasn't for me. And I like Ralph Fiennes.
Fiends, something like that.
Yeah, I like him as an actor. He's in some great movies, but I was not a fan of that one.
4 Weddings and a Funeral. I'm guessing that's not like I'm guessing that's in the same realm of like, I'm guessing it has like some down moments to that movie. But I mean, to each their own. But I don't know. Shawshank definitely to me should have maybe got Best Picture in that one. I would probably give Best Actor to Tom Hanks though, because you stack it up against Morgan Freeman, John Travolta, Paul Newman, Nigel Hawthorne. Yeah, I could see Tom Hanks getting that one. That one, okay, because I compared to Morgan Freeman, Best Actor. I don't know. I'm surprised Andy didn't get the. Tim Robbins didn't get it over Morgan because, I mean,
we'll have to get into that because I think I could see it either way because not only is Red the main narrator, but
true.
we get a lot of screen time with him, and we often see Andy through his eyes.
Yeah, I can see
not
that,
exclusively, but so I could be kind of. I would like to hear. I'm open to either argument in terms of who should have been nominated for Best Actor.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I can see Morgan Freeman getting nominated over Tim Robbins for it.
Too.
I mean, it's not like a huge diss or like
or shock even, I guess.
But then, if for Best Director, you got. I don't want to get to. We can get into the movie. This is a little segue, real quick. But damn, I'm just surprised that Forrest Gump cleaned up in those 3 categories. That's it. Pretty much.
Clearly, it must have been. I'm curious to go back and actually look at what the media was saying over there because at that time, because I can imagine that being just a complete media darling. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a very wholesome story.
Yeah, and I mean,
it's a fun story too. You know, but it's like it to me, it's just not better than Pulp Fiction, for example.
But who gets done dirty more, Forrest or Andy?
Andy's in prison.
I know Andy got raped by the sister gang for how many years? And fucking, he had to crawl through 500 yards of shit, which they said was like about a half mile.
Yeah.
I like how, like, when you hear, of course, this movie, you get the infamous Morgan Freeman doing the narration. Mm-hmm. So you almost got to watch yourself by falling asleep because this motherfucker's voice will put you to sleep a little bit. It's not like a bad thing, and it's not a knock against the movie, but he just has that type of voice where it's like he can read anything, and you're like, oh,
yeah,
shit, fuck.
No,
especially if you're puffing on the grass a little bit.
Yeah, the grass. No, indeed. Man, you want to just dive into the plot?
Let's go for it.
So I love the way that this movie opens. I think, the cuts between Andy Dufresne, who is on trial for the murder of his wife, who he was estranged from, as well as her lover, a golf pro. He's on trial for murder, and we kind of do jump cuts between him telling the jury what happened and us getting the visuals of him being drunk in the car, stepping outside the car, with the gun in his hand, bullets falling to the ground. But we never see Andy murder them. Yeah. So we don't actually know for certain what took place. We only learned the details of their death, very gruesome death. And we're left in doubt about the innocence in the face of this evidence, right? That circumstantially, like, he's guilty. They couldn't find the gun. He claimed that he threw in the river.
Well, that's what I was like.
His fingerprints are all over the crime scene.
The lawyer is making just a great case, even to like us. Like I said, we're only presented for what we're watching, and so the lawyer is making a great case to like. I think Andy actually did do this, or there's no evidence pointing that he says he didn't do it.
If not him, who? Right?
Yeah, exactly. Because you're saying that you walked away, and I drove to the house, I loaded the gun, but then I threw the gun in the river, and now you say the river, or like they scanned the river and they couldn't find the gun, and then even like
that's also
how Tim Robbins is giving the performance. Yeah, very convenient. And Tim Robbins, like how he is on the stand, I would say how he's doing the character. He doesn't like obviously give off the impression that he's an innocent man either.
Well, he doesn't seem broken up about his wife's death, and given the fact that she was having an affair, and it was recounted that his neighbors heard him tell his murdered wife, "I'll see you in hell before I grant you a divorce." So there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that stacks the deck against him, and understandably the jury finds him guilty, and he's sentenced to 2 life sentences for each of his alleged victims.
Which quickly,
this is all taking place in the 40s as well, right? This is the early 40s.
Yeah, 1947, I want to say is exactly the year that he gets sentenced to prison.
So great intro off the rip.
Yeah, I mean, because and it's pretty quick. Like I said, the lawyer kills the monologue of like delivering all the evidence to us as the viewer and the jury.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard all the evidence. You know all the facts. We have the accused at the scene of the crime. We have footprints, tire tracks. We have bullets strewn on the ground which bear his fingerprints. A broken bourbon bottle, likewise with fingerprints. And most of all, we have a beautiful young woman and her lover lying dead in each other's arms. They had sinned. But was their crime so great as to merit a death sentence? Now, while you think about that, think about this. A revolver holds 6 bullets, not 8. I submit that this was not a hot-blooded crime of passion. That at least could be understood, if not condoned. No. This was revenge of a much more brutal and cold-blooded nature. Consider this: 4 bullets per victim. Not 6 shots fired, but 8. That means that he fired the gun empty and then stopped to reload so that he could shoot each of them again.
When he's convicted, I always find it kind of funny, even in today's like world, when people get convicted of like multiple life sentences. It's like, I guess maybe it's just for paperwork or something, but I'm like, what's the need for the second life sentence?
It's almost like for the victims' families.
It should just be almost like a life should just cover the whole thing. It's like, you're never getting out. Life. You're never getting out. You don't need like, he serves 14 life sentences. It's like, motherfucker, all I gotta do is beat 12 of them bitches, and I'm out this bitch. Like, I just find it just kind of funny.
It's a little redundant,
yeah,
for sure.
Life should just kind of cover it, but getting sentenced to life sentence, and especially it's 1947, you're not getting out. Only you know if you're an innocent man, and even us as viewers, we don't even know that yet.
Yeah,
we will find out if he is truly innocent man later on in the movie.
Well, I mean, to say, after we're introduced to Andy, who's shortly going to be on his way to Shawshank Prison, we pivot to meet Red, one of our main characters, and our narrator. You know, he is sitting in front of the parole board. We learn he's served 20 years of a life sentence just before his parole is rejected, and from there, immediately we go to the prison yard, and we have this just really great shot. The cinematography on this is going to come up at least a couple of times for me, but we see this really great aerial shot of the prison. A quick note: so this prison isn't located in New England, which is often where many of Stephen King's novels and stories take place. But the prison was actually located in Ohio, and it's now listed as a National Register of Historic Places and is a tourist destination because of this movie. And this prison was shut down because a lot of abuse happened there. So there was a lot of impropriety on the part of the prison employees and officials and guards, which contributed to it being closed. But I just wanted to bring that up just for some context. But the aerial shot of Shawshank Prison, it's so beautifully done, because you just get a lay of this like really drab building, and we come to know its inhabitants, and both as far as the inmates as well as the authorities, and that's like such a great shot, as an intro to this place where we're going to be for the next 2 hours.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that. Just like, this is pretty much where the whole movie is going to take place. Of course, you're going to see certain scenes in like an office or even like the shower, but the rest of the movie is going to take place in this penitentiary. And they've used this penitentiary for like other film and television now. Says like even Lil Wayne has shot a music video here, shot Go DJ.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The WWE has used it. Ghost Hunters.
That's crazy.
So now I think it's pretty much, like I said, it's a tourist destination. It can get rented out for movies. Godsmack even did a music video here.
Yo, imagine WWF having a Hell in a Cell match at the prison.
Is this where Andy crawled through the shirt? Is this where he crawled through the shirt?
Oh man. So after we get that overhead shot, we're introduced to Hadley, this fucking terrible guard who is just sadistic. We meet him. What do you say? You hear me? Can you hear me? You speak English? Fuck stick. Yeah. I was like, oh boy, what an intro. And all the inmates, they deboard the bus, and all of the guards, are escorting these men with shotguns, and the inmates are just jeering at them.
Hey, Fish, come over here!
Calling them fresh fish, reeling them in.
Yeah, which that would frighten the shit out of me. Like, fuck man. That. Like, obviously on the outside you gotta keep a straight face, but on the inside, like, holy shit, man. Especially you're in here for fucking life. Oh my god.
Yeah, and well, what's cool too is we see as these inmates are being brought in their chains. Red and the other inmates are taking bets on who's going to fold.
Yeah.
That's something we learned is a routine kind of game that the experienced inmates play as new inmates are brought in. Mm-hmm. Red tells us every man, someone cracks every time. It's just a matter of when. And he said, I guess this is as good as gamble thing on as anything, They're
the horses.
Yeah, it's a horse race, Mm-hmm. And was it Hayward? Hayward, he gambles on I'll take chubby fat ass.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Red, he gambles that Andy's will fold.
What he's called him, like the tall string bean with the silver spoon up his ass, something like that.
Tall drink of water.
Tall drink of water with the spoon up his ass. Like, goddamn.
Oh man.
But turns out though that it wasn't quite Andy that was going to be the breaking one. It was going to be the chunky guy.
Yeah. Well, as just real quick, another cinematography note I wanted to add is as Andy is entering the prison, this is the first and only time we see him enter. We never see him exit, really.
Not the traditional way.
Not the traditional way, right? But as he's walking through like the arches, that camera shot that goes straight up vertically and you see, it's almost like he's entering the gates of hell.
Yeah.
And the irony of that statement is found in how, in The Warden, and how stern and brutal his approach is, and how willingly he deploys violence in the form of the guards, namely Hadley, in service of his needs, right? What does he say? He says, I'm the warden, you're convicted felons. That's why he sent to me. That's why they sent you to me.
Yeah, exactly.
And what does he tell him? He says, here you'll get discipline and the Bible. Put your faith in the Lord, your ass belongs to me. And that kind of establishes him as this kind of pious, but again, very stern figure. And the rest of this movie really dismantles that idea that he's not pious at all.
Well,
he's actually a very sadistic and evil man.
Yeah, he's a classic case of like somebody that's like manipulating the words in the Bible to like benefit his needs in order to like incite violence and in order as discipline on others.
Yeah.
And you see it like even like from, I can't remember what the passage that's covering up his safe in the office, but
yeah, that one I actually made a note of that. His judgment cometh, and that right soon. That's the
that's what he looks at the end.
That's the artwork that his wife crocheted.
Yeah,
or stitched. His wife created this artwork that he places in his office that conceals the safe that is in his office, and that comes full circle. We'll get to that, but sorry, you were finishing your thoughts on.
I was gonna say that, yeah, like pretty much the warden. I was wondering because obviously in the previous review we did Life, and in that prison movie, the warden wasn't really much of an antagonist. It was just, the two characters like, in prison, in life, trying to escape. And I was wondering how much, because it's been a long time since I've even seen Shawshank. I haven't even really even watched it front to back. I've only seen bits and pieces here and there. And so when I'm watching it, I'm just like, I wonder how much the warden is going to play an antagonistic role into this movie to Andy or to anybody else. And he kind of makes it known early on that that he's going to be an aggressive figure. And he just does some heinous shit along the way.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of want to dive some of the dirty ass shit that he gets into, but I don't want to, start jumping around too much.
Well, after, the first night, right, Andy doesn't crack. And instead, the heavier set, the chubby fat ass, quote unquote chubby fat ass that Hayward bet on caving, he does, and he's brutally beaten to death by Hadley. And, one thing I guess I want to say about this earlier part of the movie is the introduction between Red and Andy. Andy approaches, because this is something that kind of circles back, right? Andy walks up to him. He said, hey, I hear you're a man who knows how to get things. And, he gives him the line, yeah, I know to locate certain things from time to time. And, he says off immediately, he said, wife killing banker, why'd you do it? Well, I didn't since you asked. He laughs. He said, you're going to fit right in. Everybody's innocent. Here, everybody in here is innocent, don't you know?
The lawyer fucked me.
Hayward, what are you in for? Didn't do it. Lawyer fucked me. And that is also part of the dialogue that will resurface later in the movie. But that kind of, their interaction, this, I'll say this, sum this up, the scene up. This scene is really good because it introduces us these two characters, and Red gives some wise advice. He's looking to get Andy wants to get a rock hammer. He's a rock hound. And Red says, oh, maybe you want to sink it into, somebody's skull. And Andy responds, no, I have no enemies here. And Red says, wait a while. And, he alerts him to the fact that the sisters, these three prison inmates who happen to be, gay men, bull queers, I think is what they refer to him in that scene. Red does. They sexually assault and attack Andy for a portion of his earlier tenure at his earlier earlier years of his sentence. And I think that scene is powerful in a few different ways, but it introduces us to the rock hammer, right? It introduces us to these two characters, and I think that this movie, as well as being about redemption, is really about friendship of these two men and its evolution over their prison sentences. What do you think about that? I don't know, what do you think? Sorry, I've been hogging the mic. Go on, hear what you think.
No, you're good, bro. Well, I mean, just to touch on their friendship, obviously, even makes a nod to that's going to take you 600 years or 600. I forgot. I think he said 600 years to carve your way out of this prison for that. But it all comes back full circle, even when he's narrating it, saying that, oh, I guess it only took him less than 20. But it's just that's just showing you how their friendship started, and it just blossoms to over time as they're spending their years together.
Yeah.
But to even touch on we said with the horses and the bedding and stuff, the bigger dude, he starts crying out, which first, why are you doing that? You just need to cut that shit out.
It's just the shock, and I
mean, I get it, but it's man, you got to internalize that. You got to pipe it down a little bit. But you can kind of see how everybody's kind of taking it as a joke until he starts getting
until Hadley comes in.
Yeah, Hadley comes in and starts really whooping his ass, and then all the inmates just get real quiet, and all you hear is just the sounds of the stick just hitting him. And,
those blows were just brutal.
Yeah, the sound design to use to emphasize that was just
spot on.
Really feel it, and for them to cut the audio of all the inmates to just make it seem so quiet, that's a nice touch as well. So
I ain't gonna count to 3. I'm not even gonna count to 1. You will shut the fuck up or I'll sing you a lullaby.
Please, please, it's been a mistake. You don't understand. I'm not supposed to be here.
Open that cell.
Me neither.
Son of a bitch.
but
Oh yeah, well the way that scene ends, Hadley says, "I swear by Sonny, God, and Jesus, if I hear another so much as a mouse fart, every last motherfucker in here is going to visit the infirmary."
yeah,
And
nobody
says a goddamn thing
because he fucking means it.
You know, he's out.
He's a big dude. Like
man, them blows look like they hit and hurt.
Dude, like I said, they got a great actor. Like he's got like
he nails that role.
He could almost play like a Batman. Like if you would have caught him like on a good day, but because he's got that strong jawline for that.
You know, he look like he can take a hook.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's such a. I mean that scene really just establishes like this is the world we're in, and you know we see, you know, the sisters approaching Andy in the shower and you know making passes at him. And this movie, you know, Red gives that really great line. You know, I wish I could tell you that Andy fought the good fight. You know, but you know, prison is no fairy tale place. And I think that this movie, it doesn't show us it, but it definitely alludes to it very, I mean, pretty on the nose, right? That he was subject to rape and sexual violence. And that's not something, and this is all in the context of drama. This is not a comedy, right? This is not, don't drop the soap. You know, this is like, I think when we're often are shown that aspect of prison, it's usually in a humorous way. Yeah. Whereas this, it's showing you a much far darker, and I would say probably more accurate, you know, more accurate depiction of just like that horrific aspect of prison, and particularly in male's prison, but not exclusively male prisons.
Like you said, like sometimes he was able to fight him off, sometimes he wasn't, and this happened over
years, early years.
It didn't happen over his whole entire time because eventually, quick note, I wanted to just make a note of like when they come back to the table and they're paying back their bets because obviously he was like, oh, he got sent to the infirmary, but it turns out that he ended up dying because they just left him there. And by the time
the doctors were there,
by the time he got wheeled in, it was just nothing they could do. And you can just see how serious they all take it, that even though that they're in all prison together, that they're all supposed to look out for another. It's not like one against another. Like, yeah, the sister gang is doing their fucking little weirdo shit, but you have a sense of camaraderie around
some of the other inmates.
Yeah, the inmates that are at least around Andy and Red, and what's his name? Who's the third guy? The one that bet?
Hayward.
Hayward, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we also meet Brooks at this table, who's going to be. I definitely want to speak on Brooks because I think Brooks is an essential character for unlocking this story. But just I think, you know, what's happening with Andy, you know, he's going through the routine, he's doing this menial, mindless job, and he's also, you know, trying to fight off the sisters. And as that's all that's happening, you know, something like really just a force of luck happens, and they're all able to retar the building of a nearby factory, and this allows Andy to get in good with the guards in a situation that potentially was going to turn very deadly. Yeah, I thought that when he walks, you know, Hadley is bitching and complaining about, you know, his quote unquote asshole brother who passed away, and you know he's left him $35,000, something like that. Yeah, and you know he's saying, oh, you know, Uncle Sam's gonna take a big wet bite out of my ass. You know, and they're all like pushing the mops of tar, you know, listening to this sad story.
Yeah, quote unquote.
And Andy gets the idea to go up to him and say,
Mr. Hadley, do you trust your wife?
Oh, that's funny. You're gonna look funnier sucking my dick with no teeth.
remember watching this first time. It's like, what are you doing?
It's like, bro, you better talk real fast.
And he tells him, as because he worked for the bank, he tells him, hey, you can give a one-time gift of up to $35,000. I think
it was up to. I think it was higher. I think it was like 60 or
up
something.
Up to $60,000 to your
first time
to your spouse, tax free. And he says, I can set that up for you, and that essentially really shifts his role within the prison, because that opens up doors for him, gets him out of the room, also gets him protection, because when the sisters fuck with him that last time.
Yeah,
that's the last time.
That is the last time.
Because Hadley went to work on the sisters later, beat him. I mean, he wasn't able to walk or chew food.
Dude, well, because after after he helped out Hadley with that, then he becomes like,
he got in good with the guards.
He got in with good with the guards, got in good with the inmates. Like
later with the warden.
Then once he starts like cooking the books for the warden and everything, it's like, dude. When they beat the shit out of old boy, like the sister gang, I can't help. I did not feel bad at all.
No,
especially when they're like, oh, like he pretty much was paralyzed after that. He couldn't walk again. It's like, I don't know if you want us to feel bad, but I'm like, I don't feel bad for you. That's what happens, bro. You got your ass whooped. Move on.
That's just comeuppance right there.
But like you said, Andy at this point, like he's like getting in good with everybody. He's cooking the books for the warden at this point.
Well, that comes a little bit later, because remember he goes to the prison and he picks up the Bible as they're tossing Andy's cell, and he picks up the Bible that later on we come to believe like that's what probably was housing the rock hammer. And he uses that. The warden uses the tossing of Andy's cell to size him up, because of his education and his professional background. And, he basically brings him on. He puts him in the library with Brooks, which, essentially becomes just really a temporary space, because he uses that. He eventually moves him on to better serve his own greed, the warden's greed, I mean. But just, I guess... does it make sense to talk about Brooks now, Brooks Hadley?
Yeah, let's talk about Brooks.
I think he's an essential character to understanding this story,
because like it leads to Red and like how his character like it could have he could have went down the same road as Brooks.
1,000%. I think Brooks represents the institutional man. I'm sorry. To quote Red. This Brooks had been there since he was a boy. I'm talking early 1900s. I think he says I think it was
1904.
Yeah, he wasn't even out. He wasn't even free when the first cars were on the roads.
Yeah,
and so he has been in prison, and now he's in his 70s. The man has arthritis. This man goes from being an educated man within the walls of Shawshank, when he's given and granted parole, which, he reacts to Hayward congratulating him on that by nearly killing him. And he does that so that he can stay. It's the only way that they'll let him stay. This man is terrified of leaving these prison walls and going out into the world. And I think he's he ultimately commits suicide because he's unable to adjust to life beyond those walls, the prison walls. And when Red is reflecting on that and talking about that, reading Brooks's letter, his last letter to them, he says he should have died in here. I think that character becomes really important in understanding Red, because Red's redemption comes from his friendship with Andy, helping him realize that's not who he has to be, despite all of the limitations, despite a place that's designed to strip you of hope, strip of your individuality. I mean, we see that again in the example of the harmonica. He says, remember when they're at the table after Andy, pulled that stunt where he played the opera on the loudspeaker, when you see this really great picture of the prison yard and all the men looking up and trying to understand, listening to this beautiful voice. when Andy is taken and sent to the hole for that, you know, he comes out and they're all eating in the cafeteria, and Andy says, you know, there's things that I had the music to keep me company. That's not something they can take away from me. And he tries to impress upon his friend Red that hope is something that we can't let, that they cannot let that Shawshank take from them.
There's something inside that they can't get to, that they can't touch. It's yours.
What are you talking about?
Hope.
Hope. Let me tell you something, my friend. Hope is a dangerous thing. Hope can drive a man insane. It's got no use on the inside. You better get used to that idea.
Like Brooks did?
And that's a hard thing for Red to hear, and he gets up and leaves. But I think like that, I think that character is so important in understanding one side of the spectrum that is bereft of hope, Andy who is hopeful, and then like as the movie goes on, we see Red, who's kind of more towards Brooks' side, get pulled further and further towards Andy, and I think that's one of the best parts of the story.
Yeah, because I mean, you understand why Red kind of feels that way, because you see how he goes in the parole board and he's been rejected numerous times already. You can see like his picture on the board and how young he looked, and you're like,
that was actually his son. His son.
Oh,
actually,
really?
Yeah, that was his son.
Morgan Freeman's son?
His son, when he was younger, that was him who was in that picture.
Oh, damn. Shit.
Yeah.
Didn't even know that. That's a nice little
cool
little
detail.
trivia, little detail, little trivia question. But you can understand why Red would feel that way. Like, there is no hope for you're gonna die in this place. And even when he mentions to the crew that Brooks was just an institutionalized man, he kind of it seemed like they wasn't kind of like believing that. They were just kind of like passing it off, just like, I think that he was just like kind of going crazy or something. But he was just telling them like, no, he should have died in here. This is where he belonged, and he couldn't acclimate. Like Red seemed like in that scene, he already knew what Brooks was kind of going through at that time.
He
was a little more
identified
understanding
with him.
Yeah,
I think then, and a lot of people couldn't understand. A lot of the other inmates were dismissive of, what do you mean institutional, man?
Yeah.
They didn't think that was really a thing. But, one big part of the story that we got to touch on, as Andy is laundering the money through the prison for the warden, he essentially is exploiting the prison labor of the inmates to do various infrastructure programs, and
getting that cheap labor.
Yeah, getting the cheap labor, getting kickbacks, taking bribes. He is. We see how corrupt he is, all because he holds himself above these inmates and believes that they are less than him, right? But as this is happening, as Andy has set all these things up, the fake name with the bank accounts, all of this, in comes Tommy.
Yeah.
Tommy is, a young
breaking and entering kind of
inmate. He definitely has a little bit of fire to him.
He's been locked up since he was a teenager.
Yeah. And I love that scene where he's telling them about, I've done prison all up and down in New England. And Andy says, maybe you ought to consider a career change. You don't seem to be very good.
Yeah.
He said, what are you in for, Capone? And he gives him that line that Hayward gave him.
What are you in for? Me? Lawyer, fuck me. Everybody's innocent in here. Don't you know that?
I think that was like another really great writing that circles back to that line.
Yeah.
What did you think about that storyline with Tommy?
Well, I would say that's kind of when, I won't say the story like changed or anything, but that's kind of obviously the character of Andy kind of switched a bit, because he was obviously looking for a new purpose at that point.
New project.
And then, new project, something to keep him busy. And so once Tommy came in and he approached him and was like, oh, you're the guy that helped pretty much all these other inmates get their GED and everything like that, helped them out with schooling and stuff. Can you help him out? And so Andy took him under his wing, try to teach him the way. By the time like his test came around, obviously Tommy kind of flipped shit, wasn't confident in himself or anything like that. But Andy, I think that was like, he took the test and obviously you had to mail it off and get the results, because they ended up getting the results later on.
Yeah.
But then they do a good job of showing like the relationship between Tommy and Andy, just like their small scenes together. They don't show a whole lot, but they show some nice scenes with them.
Well, to your point though, I think just something to highlight too, that you mentioned that this essentially Tommy was another project for him to kind of pour into. The project before that, Andy was writing the state to get funds for a new library. He was writing 2 letters daily, and it ended up paying off, and he was able to create what they said was one of the best libraries, inmate libraries in the New England area. And this is where he is prepping Tommy to take this exam, and to your point, like, he definitely doesn't have any confidence. He's frustrated, goddamn cats calling up trees.
1, 2, 3 cats calling up trees.
He's
but like once like Tommy Tommy ends up like hearing about the actual story of why Andy's in jail, or prison, whatever. And so at first I was kind of like, what the fuck is going on? But then Tommy starts explaining the story about where he came from, the old prison where he came from, about this inmate confessing to a murder that
an old cellmate,
which pretty much was the exact murder that Andy's in prison for. And so Andy takes that information to the warden, and warden is pretty much just brushing it off.
Downplaying it, minimizing it,
saying,
trying to sabotage it.
Yeah. But then, excuse me. But then, Warden, I guess, I'm not sure if he actually like got any like hard evidence that Tommy was telling the truth, but I think he just pretty much wanted just to nip this shit in the bud, and was just like, let me just put an end to this. And he pretty much gets the guards to get Tommy outside and
murders him.
And he's kind of like, Tommy's already like kind of taken back, like, oh, we're meeting out here, and they're having like a little talk with one another, and Warden he's just setting him up, just playing into his good nature and just offering him a little cigarette. And so he's like, oh, did you actually hear that inmate say that? And once Tommy's like, oh yeah, I'll get on the jury and hand to God,
would you be willing to put your hand on the good book? And that's what the warden says to him.
He puts out that cigarette.
He's like, just give me the chance.
Yeah, just give me the chance. And he was like, I thought you'd say that. And gives Hadley the...
He walks away, and the way that he gives that look to that... It goes back to that first scene, right? Where the inmate's like, when do we eat? And the warden looks at Hadley, and he goes up to him and says, we eat when you say we eat. You get that, you maggot motherfucker?
You piss when we say you piss.
Oh, man.
It's like, Jesus Christ. So Hadley's just obviously is just the...
at his beck and call for the brutality whenever he needs to do it,
Yeah, exactly. The enforcer to the king, to use a Game of Thrones reference in a way.
Yeah. And all this is happening as Andy is in solitary, because when Andy approached the warden and asked, hey, like, he basically said, how can you be so obtuse? I would never mention money or what goes on in here. That sets the warden off.
I was like, Andy, why would you say that?
Yeah, he was like, I'm just trying to put your mind at ease. I get why he was doing that in that moment, but I think he was just a Hail Mary. He's like, yo, maybe this will put him at ease.
Yeah, and it fucked him.
And it fucked him. He ended up getting a month. And when the warden goes down to tell him that Tommy was killed, allegedly trying to escape. Andy, tells him, "Hey, I'm done. Find somebody else to run your schemes." And
Warden delivers a fucking
knockout blow.
A knockout, overhand, one-hitter quitter. I will pretty much burn that library to the ground. You will get your protection will get cut.
Yep.
You will get sent to pretty much the bottom area of
with
the prison,
sodomites. Yeah.
You will feel like you've been raped by a train. Like,
yeah.
ooh.
And on top of that, he gives him another month. I mean, this is another thing I think that this movie highlights is just the torturous effects of solitary confinement. The other inmates were just shocked. 2 months.
Well, when you
I
think
never
about
heard
it,
about anybody getting that much time.
When you think about it, it's like you're already in prison. You think like, how much worse can it be? Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, at least I'm around other people. I got like some other dudes here that are somewhat friendly, and to throw them in solitary where it's just you all alone in the dark, don't know where you're pissing, don't know where you're shitting, don't know where you're eating after a certain amount of time, like a month, like yeah, maybe a day or so, but a fucking month, and then he gets a second one. Oh man! After that, Andy's character has pretty much had it up to his neck, and he's plotting his escape. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, we pivot to that right where there's this great conversation, with Red and Andy, just the two of them, and I think that I got to say that there are a few scenes of the two of them where it's just the dialogue and the acting is just top tier for me. So, for example. When they're playing checkers and Red asks Andy why he did it, and he responds with what Red told him when they first met. And in that conversation, Andy learns that Red's in for murder, same as he is. Mm-hmm. And Andy asks him if he's innocent.
And we getting to be kind of friends, okay?
Yeah, I guess.
Can I ask you something? Why'd you do it?
I'm innocent, Red. Just like everybody else here. What are you in for?
Murder. Same as you.
Innocent?
Only guilty man in Shawshank.
I think he's a man who's, despite all of the parole rejections, I think he's somebody who is he's accepted the horrible thing that he did and is living with it. And that surfaces in the last parole hearing, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think that was a really great scene because I think it differentiated him from, in yet another way, from the other inmates. I think he, like I said, that was a really genuine moment from him.
Yeah, I think that highlights their friendship a lot as well because he's being honest with one another. It's like, yeah, I might be the only guilty man in Shawshank because, like I said, he acknowledges what he did and that he's not an innocent man, and so that's definitely a high attribute in friendship is honesty. So
yeah, well,
there's a great scene.
That scene and the scene when Andy is let out of solitary and they're both talking, like Andy's up against the wall, and Andy says to him, he's just, the storm had to land on someone. I just didn't think it would last this long. And he asks him, he tells him, all I want is, where I'd go when I get out. And he tells him about Zwatznail. Mm-hmm. He said everything, that I've been through, it's not too much to ask, to have a hotel where I can take my guest out charter fishing. And he says, he tells Red, he said, I could use a man who knows how to get things. And there's another one of those really vulnerable moments with Red where he says, I don't think I could make it on the outside. He's like, I'm an institutional man. And just like Brooks was. And I think like that's one of those moments where he still has kind of accepted mentally the limitations that Shawshank has put on him physically. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a really powerful scene, kind of harking back to Brooks as a really essential character to understanding the redemptive part of this story through Red, because Red is really the one who finds redemption. I think Andy finds it in a very different way, but I think Red finds it because he's able to see that he can be more than what this prison has shown him to be over the last 40 years.
Yeah, he's found like almost like his purpose, his hope in life. Andy just wanted to get out of prison, and maybe Red just wanted to find like if he could become more than just like an inmate in that penitentiary.
Well, tell me what you think of this. I think the redemption for Andy is really as it relates. I think maybe primarily as it relates to the prison, because he offers the prison redemption through creating that library, right, and that resource, and helping the men get their GEDs. But I also think he tries to redeem it by exposing the evils that happen there when he does escape.
Yeah.
So that's where I think of the redemption in terms of story arc. What do you think?
Well, yeah, definitely, because I mean, getting the warden back, I think I don't think getting revenge on the warden wasn't part of his initial plan. Until like Tommy came into the picture.
Until he fucked him over.
Yeah, because it seemed like you said, even when he's like, I won't say anything about what I did and blah blah blah. It wasn't until like that point when like he kills Tommy, when he's like, oh fuck this, I'm getting payback now. So I mean, maybe he was gonna steal the money, obviously steal some of the money and like all that type of shit. But once Tommy was killed, I think he was on.
He made up his mind.
He made up his mind like, oh, I'm gonna get out of here and I'm gonna get my get back. And maybe he would have like just taken the money and just vamoosed, but he was like, I'm about to send these books back too as well. And obviously like him going with the escape, that just quick. I don't have like really any negatives I can really say about this movie. I mean, this movie hits so many notes on like, it even has comedic moments into it. It does. Like I said, like when he breaks out, or not breaks out, but he locks himself into the office and he plays the music over the loudspeakers. Or even like they're going through the books and he's like, Count of Monte Cristo, who's Alexander dumbass. I'm sitting there watching, I'm like, oh, Dumas?
That's a funny scene
because I totally forgot about that. I'm like, oh my God.
Well, because remember, he said, you know what that's about? He said, no. He's like, it's about a prison break. You'll like it. And then Red's like, should we put that under educational too?
That's so funny.
It's a good line.
But one thing I will say, because honestly, everything kind of, I can't really find necessarily any holes in the story, except for like, not necessarily a hole, but it's like when he's talking about the prison escape and how like he's just carving the hole, the tunnel, whatever. And he's pretty much taking trips just back and forth to the yard.
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, how many fucking trips is that going to take? How long was, obviously they talk about 500 yards of shit that he had crawled through, but how long was that tunnel? I'm not sure if they specified how long that fucking tunnel was.
Yeah, they said 500, was it 500 yards, 400? Like, he's like,
no, the 500 yards was like he gets out the tunnel, then he takes the rock and he's banging the pipe.
Oh, how long did he have to crawl from the wall to the pipes?
Yeah, he crawled through 500 yards of shit once he was already out of that.
I got you, what you're saying.
But how long was that tunnel that he had? Because I'm just thinking like, how fucking many trips? I mean, granted, it is 20 years or almost 20 years, 19, whatever. But how many trips is that motherfucker taking outside to take that dirt and nobody notice? Yeah, that's just. I'm not saying like that's like a plot hole. It's not gonna bring my score down or anything. Yeah. But that's one little thing I was like, that's a little. Well, I guess fancy writing, but whatever.
Yeah, I was gonna say I love the fuck you note that Andy leaves in the Bible that he gives to the warden, right? Because when Andy gets out, he skips town with, I think he said like hundreds of thousands of the warden's money that he had helped him launder over the years. And then he drops off the books and kind of basically a letter to the local newspaper, exposing what was going on there. And next thing you know, you can hear the police sirens pulling up. The warden sees
I was like, hell yeah,
in the newspaper corruption at Shawshank. Then he looks over to the artwork that his wife had made, right? The one that says his judgment cometh and that right soon.
Oh, it's coming.
Oh, man. And he goes and he sees the note that Andy left in the Bible, which has been, which stored the hammer. And it says, you were right. What does it say? You were right, Warden. Salvation lies within.
Yeah.
That was just so good, man. And seeing this self-righteous man take the cowardly way out rather than face his sins.
Oh, because like Hadley and that fucking Warden was going to get theirs once they would have as Red says, the reality sets in once those bars close and that lock hits, and you're just sitting there butt naked with your skin burning and your eyes burning from all that whatever shit they threw on you. It's like that's when shit sets in. And nothing would have set in more for Hadley or Warden until that moment. But Hadley will get his. Yeah. But
he was crying when they took him away.
Yeah, Warden unfortunately would not get his. But before we get into the scores of this movie, I think this movie obviously has a ton of highlights. But what would you say is your number one highlight?
So my number one highlight, so just to tie the bow on the story, Red ends up going to the parole after Andy has escaped and presumably gone to Mexico. He gets gets parole.
Yeah, parole.
Right. He also gets postcards from right near the Mexico border. And one of the things that Andy said to him before he escaped was, "Hey, promise me you'll go to this field, follow this wall. There's going to be." And I'll leave something there. There's something there. I want you to have it. And when Red is freed, he feels as disoriented and scared, I think, as Brooks did.
Yeah.
But one thing that kept him from violating his parole was a promise he made to Andy. And he goes to the location that Andy told him, finds a letter in an envelope with some cash that's basically saying, hey, if you traveled this far, maybe you'll come a little bit further. You remember the name of the city. You remember the name of the town. And Red breaks his parole, and he hops on the bus to get to...
It was part of Texas.
Mexico, right? To get to the part of Texas where he could cross into the
he went
border.
to Texas so he could cross over.
Yeah. And originally, Darabont was on record of saying that this ending was ambiguous. It wasn't the ending we actually got. It was more, they kind of cut off where Red says, I'm on a path with an unknown future. I don't know how this story is going to end. And the audience would have been left wondering whether or not he even makes it. And the studio execs actually encouraged him to write a more, I think they said, more of a cathartic ending, given the 2 years of just hardship that we forced this character and the audience to kind of endure. And so for me, I only give that context for the audience and those who haven't seen it to say that my number one highlight is the end. It's so fucking beautiful.
I find I'm so excited I can barely sit still or hold a thought in my head. I think it's the excitement only a free man can feel. A free man at the start of a long journey whose conclusion is uncertain. I hope I can make it across the border. I hope to see my friend and shake his hand. I hope the Pacific is as blue as it has been in my dreams. I hope.
And then we have that shot of Andy working on the ship that he's going to use to take his guest fishing, charter fishing. And we see Red walking up, and as the sun, as they get closer, the camera zooms out, and they hug each other. That shit is such a fucking chef's kiss. Yeah. God damn.
He's like, I just wanted to see my friend again.
How did they not win anything? This is nuts.
Well, it's going against another tearjerker, I suppose, and Forrest Gump and all that type of shit. But I mean,
I could talk endless about this movie. I'm sorry, bro.
It's just
but go
because
ahead, please.
it's just because they go through so much shit even together in those 20 years. I mean, that's a long time,
man.
It's like how many people can say that they've had like a 20-year friendship with somebody?
Yeah, for real.
So
especially under those
circumstances, and for them to actually like be reunited, because anything could have happened. Red was already getting so many rejections of his parole. So, but I will say, he mentions that if you get out of here, Red, in prison, I want you to go to blah 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 and grab the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he gets there, there's a note for him.
Mm-hmm.
Was like, how did he get that there? So how did he already know that thing, when he's there in prison?
He was going to put that there. He was
making a proclamation that he was like, fuck this, I'm getting out of here.
He's already, he had made up his mind. I think he ends up escaping days, if not the next day after.
Okay, so
he was planning to.
He's
do
just
that.
like making that in his mind that
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I'm gonna make it there. I'm gonna put this note and then
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure that's clear, just because when I'm like, I'm sitting there, I'm chiefing, and I'm just like, what the fuck? How did I just thought that was some sort of like little plot hole, but I'm just like, okay, whatever. I'm not trying to find anything bad with the movie or anything like that.
No, I feel you.
But obviously, like I said, when you're chiefing on the reefer and you're watching some of these movies, something just pops in your head of like, how the fuck did this happen? And sometimes you just gotta talk it out with somebody.
Rewind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you. What would you say? What would you say are some of your highlights?
Man, obviously, like some of my highlights was like I said, maybe some of the even more lighter notes of the movie, whether it was the music scene when he locks himself in the office, or the Alexander Dumas scene. Those were just some of like the best scenes for me, or even when Andy and Red are just kind of chatting with one another, them sitting around, like him grabbing like Andy grabbing the maggot from his food and giving it to Brooks with the bird, with the bird Jack, and everything. Yeah. And dude, Brooks is the only dude that could give Eugene Levy a run for his money with those eyebrows, because those things was ready to crawl off the fucking screen. My lord. But just seeing just like the camaraderie with the inmates is some of my best highlights of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, to your point though, I think that what this movie does a really great job of humanizing them. I mean, you almost feel like these guys could be on lunch from working at an auto factory.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially with the main characters, and I think that was like something that really stood out, because some of them, like Red, were sent for murder, and highlight for me, I thought it was a really cool detail the way that they would incorporate Red's parole hearings almost as a way of delineating time over their years. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a really cool detail, just as a tool for the storytelling. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think. The shot from from actual. Just the way that it was shot, the cinematography of the scene, the one where Warden, after Andy's escaped, where Warden pokes his hole through the poster and removes it, shot, and the view that you get, that shot of him and Hadley and Red kind of leaning over and looking down that hole, I thought that was a excellent shot. I thought that was really fun, but also very effective. It just really played to that scene well.
I think you get two of the most iconic scenes, right? Is like the tunnel. That's like every time you see like a Shawshank like preview or whatever, they always show the tunnel scene, or the cover when Andy's finally free and he's taking his shirt off, dancing with his shirt off at the end in the rain. But another shot that you mentioned too, I think is iconic, of just the aerial view of the whole penitentiary towards the beginning when Andy and everybody else is getting wheeled in. Those are just three of some of the iconic shots of the movie, but
no, absolutely,
it's filled with great cinematography. The writing's on point, directing,
the
acting.
Score.
Like I said, the only thing that this fell short of was just the box office and just winning a couple of awards. Where, I mean, potato. If you like Forrest Gump, you like Forrest Gump, but I'm more of a Shawshank or Pulp Fiction guy.
Same, and I think that this movie's quality has been validated in the fact that it surfaces in list after list as one of the greatest movies ever made. I would not say that about Forrest Gump.
I mean, I think they're both in that National Film Registry.
They definitely are, and they should be.
But it's just, I don't know. I'm just not a Forrest Gump guy, I suppose. But I mean, maybe we'll do a rewatch on that at some point.
I'll be down to review it. It's a fun movie. Lieutenant Dan is a character.
Oh yeah.
But I also would rather, I've never seen this, but I would be down to review Apocalypse Now. That's a long watch. I'd be open. I have not had the patience to sit through that, but I would be open to watching that. I only mention that because they're both take place during Vietnam, right? Or I think it takes place in the same region. I can't remember if they're both Vietnam.
Yeah, I can't remember from Apocalypse Now, but you could be right. But yeah, I mean, I'll be down to review that. I'm always down for anything.
Well, man, with that, actually, anything else before we pivot to the scores?
Nah. We're already going on a little long. I think we've kind of covered a great deal. I mean, like I said, like we can go into even more detail that we've already done, but I'm ready to get into scores.
All right, you want to kick us off?
Well, I was already, after this movie ended, I finished it this morning, actually. I watched half of it last night, other half this morning, and I was dancing around 2 scores. But I'm going to go ahead and give it the 5-star approval from Francisco. Man. I was about to give it a 4.5, but I can't find any holes to the movie the more I think about it. It's kind of like, the movie's not like it at all, but it's when I saw The Batman, the newest one with Robert Pattinson. After I came out of it, the more I thought about it, I just kept liking more things. I kept noticing more things I enjoyed about the movie. And so I was like, man, why wouldn't I rank this higher? So the more I think about Shawshank, the more I enjoy the movie. It's very rewatchable, even with its, sadder demeanor. Anybody that would be up for watching Shawshank is one of those movies where whenever it pops on TBS, TNT, any of those networks, you got to turn it on and just see what part it's at. And hopefully it's not at the Sister Gang, because that part sucks. Yeah. So other than that, 5-star.
Man, we have a meeting of the minds on this one too. I thought you were going to go for a 4.5. I'm actually surprised that you gave it a 5. But you said you were kind of dancing between. But man, I'm with you. This is a 5 for me. This movie excels in really the big areas for me, which are the directing, the acting, the writing, and the cinematography. I mean, this movie excels at all those levels in an all-time great kind of way. This movie is oddly rewatchable for me. Yeah. I also tend to like dark shit, though. I mean, Taxi Driver is one of my favorites of all time too. So I like dramas in general. So this movie, yeah, man, I could talk hours about this movie. I think that it's a work of art. I can't think of much. Even though this movie is 2 hours, or over 2 hours.
It was 2 hours and 2:22. But honestly, like I said, it flew by. I started it late last night, and next thing I know, like pretty much an hour and a half of it like flew by, and I was like, whoa, but I got to get to bed. Shit.
And when I was watching this movie, I was thinking about the time and just the pace of this movie and the flow of it. And there was never a moment in this movie where I'm just like, it's kind of a lull. Mm-hmm. I never felt that in this movie. It goes together so seamlessly, and the narration does its job in keeping you engaged. I can't recommend this movie enough. That's my score. 5, same as you.
Yeah, I think I've saved my 5-star. I think the only movies that we've reviewed so far I gave 5-star to is Shawshank, Jaws, and Fury Road. Those are the only.
I definitely gave it to Jaws. Yeah, I think we might be aligned on that actually. I think I might give him Fury Road 4.5.
Yeah, I think you gave Fury Road 4.5.
But Jaws and this definitely, I'm with you.
Yeah, Jaws didn't get the 5-star from me.
It didn't?
No.
Oh, Jaws didn't.
No.
Oh.
Shawshank, Toy Story, Fury Road.
Oh, Toy Story. Yeah.
I gave Toy Story 4.5. Those 3 games. And like I said, I want to save those 5 stars for solid movies. And if I didn't have Shawshank in here, like, I mean, everybody sees their own. If you watch this movie, you don't like it, that's your opinion. Mm-hmm. But when I'm holding my list and I wanted to look at my 5 stars and I want to have like a consistent list, and I think Shawshank slides very firmly into that position.
Yep. All right. Thanks, folks, for joining us on this week's episode of 5 on It. Catch y'all next time.
Peace.